is the most morbid history that I see, how they beautify this falsification of history. And that's why I insist that we have to change our lexicon, not only to talk about religion and human rights, which is very important to use to talk about human rights, because after human rights, Western people, Western mass start to approach, to discover Palestinian cause. No, definitely. We have to insist in human rights. I never deny that. Please, no, this is very important. But the root is not human rights. It's not religious. It's a native. Today, in our times, 21st century, we are talking about colonialism, this anachronism. This is not a trophy. You know, we are still in this misery. And that's why we have to make this revolutionary state. I think that's the liberation of Palestine is the liberation of the world.
Hi, this is Ileana Chan with the Ignoramus Guide, and today I have a very special co-host, Ahmed Sharan, and a very special guest, Susana Khalil. I definitely said that wrong, but Ahmed, would you like to introduce Susana to our audience?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having us, Ileana. It's a pleasure to be on your program again. We have a new guest here, Susana Khalil. She's, I would refer to her as an intellectual. She's a writer, a political and human rights activist, a revolutionary figure, a very strong fighter in favor of Palestine and human rights, and a very good friend. So welcome, Susana.
Welcome. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks to you, both of you.
So Ahmed and I, our last episode together was about from Gaza Fights for Freedom. We discussed that, and it was like, for me, more of a bigger introduction into the details of that situation. So I'm like really happy to have another conversation about that, sort of like clarifying, I think, for me, some of the finer points of that. And I think we can just get into it, because my first question would be, you wrote this article entitled The Palestinian Cause is not, wait, I'm butchering the title. Let me just like pull it up. The Palestinian Cause is neither a religious nor a human rights cause. So what do you mean by that? Because most people would say it's those two things.
Yes. Well, first of all, thanks for the invitation. And let me to talk about the Palestinian cause. What is this Palestinian cause? Palestinian cause is we are today, and is a cause of native people who are fighting against colonialism. That's it. That's all. We are in the 21st century. And we think, even we feel that colonialism is something out of our time, which is not the case. The colonialism is still exists in our time. This anachronism is still, this shame, this misery is still exist in our time, in your history, in my history, in our time, historic time. And Palestinian cause is, as I say, is the people, native people who are fighting against this colonialism called Israel. This is a classic colonialism which was imposed from Europe, by Europeans, through a movement called Zionism. The Zionism is a European movement who want to create a État-nation, a state, and they take a group of Europe, Jewish, the religion of this religion. Which religion? Jewish religion, to create a state only for them, which is when you create a state, fabricate a state only for a group. It's mean Jewish or Christian or Muslim. This is a segregationist state. But it's not only that, it's a colonial in the under equation of colonialism. So it's born in Europe by European, which is very important to say that the people of this movement are not Semites. They are Indo-European, which embraced this religion, which is this religion is come from Middle East, from the Arab world, with the ancestry of Arab. But but this problem is not a religious problem, at all. To say that this is a religious problem, this is to hide the roots of this conflict, which is a colonial root, which is shameful. How come we are in the 21st century and that we are still talking about colonialism, which is the roots and the root of Palestinian cause? I insist in that. It's because people want to see that as an ancient conflict, which is not the case. It's new. It's started after the First World War in Western. And it's not a religious, is a political, is a national people who want to get be free of this colonial movement, like was it the case of Mexico, or Algerian, or any African people, native, who want to be free of any conquered colonial group of Europe. And okay, that's the point that I see that we have to talk about that. So, what is the Palestinian cause? This is not a religious, it's not a human right. It can be. It's many people feel that in the religious way they have to fight for Palestine. Of course, this is we can see the element of human rights violation, but it's not the root of Palestinian. The violation of Palestinian root, the violation of Palestinian human right is the consequence of the violation of their right, the national right. That's the point. For example, when I would like to say, and we have to insist on that, we are in the 21st century, and there is a people, native, who are fighting, struggling against this classic anachronism, colonial situation today in our 21st century, which is something retrograde. This is a misery. This is how come we are talking about human rights, feminism, freedom, and all kind of movement, all kind of reivindication, and that we are still atropinated. We are still in this anachronism of colonialism. This is the point that is the root of Palestinian cause, and that this colonialism is the worst colonialism. I'm almost sure about that. I want to be very responsible when I say this is the worst colonialism in the whole human history. Why I say that? I have to in which point why I say that? Because this colonialism, it doesn't come from from people. I mean, from a nation, from a country. Why I say that? Because Jews, as a Christian, as a Muslim, they are religion. They are not people. When people say the people of Islam, no, there is not a people of Islam. The people of Christian, no. It's even the same for Jewish. Both of those are religion. We don't have to mix religion with the nationality. And even in our time of secularism values, where are our secular values when which I embrace, which I believe in secularism, and how come we are talking about the Jewish state or Muslim state or Christian state? So it's not I think logic is a fraud. This is the falsification of history. And the point also to talk about that is a big taboo. It's, you cannot talk about that because even you're gonna be under big threat, and they're gonna demonize you, and it's not honest if we avoid those topics. We have to talk about everything. Everybody have to talk. They give their own point of view, and that's the point that we are talking about religion, human rights. We are talking about we want many things, but we don't are talking about the root of this. The Palestinian cause. Even people talk about Palestinian, but they don't talk about the Palestinian cause, which is different also. And why? But I want to retake my point when I say why I say that this colonialism is the worst colonialism in the whole history of humanity, because it's come from a movement, a European movement that want to fabricate a État-nation. And this situation, they want to create it under the falsification of history, under colonialism, and for example, they create they want to create it in Palestine, and they use this strategic argument that it's the land that's for the Jewish land that was promised by God for them, and all argument that this is our historical rights, which is very well structured, but this is the falsification of history. Imagine if Chinese Muslim, they want to reclaim historical rights in Saudi Arabia, for example. No, and it's imagine if a Christian want to also say to ask for historical right in Syria, for example, because it's the roots of Christianity in the dogmatic as a dogmatic doctrine, as a doctrine, for example, or Palestine. And so there is a wonderful, when I say wonderful, manipulation, the falsification of history. And the point is also that when I say that this is the worst colonialism in the whole history, is because this movement, because this colonial movement doesn't come from the country. They feel the necessity to exterminate the native in order to really create and instaurate this colonial or État-nation. So that's why they say they not only take Zionism or Europe Zionism, they not only take the land of Palestinian native, they take the history, the ancient history and contemporary history, and they take all the culture of Palestinian. They say that, for example, the music, the food, the culinary tradition, and the tatris, for example, the embroidery of Palestinian, they take everything. Why? Because the reason why they are doing that, because they don't have their own history. And that's why they take the history and the tradition and culture of native, because they don't have it. And why they don't have it? Because they don't come from a country, because each country have their own culture. I want to give you an example. Like a British, they colonize, they have a point of the parts. They are in England, and they go to India, and then the Indian native, they get their independence, and the colonizer, they have the point of return. Zionist ideologists say is not our case, because when the native, they get their own freedom, independence, where are we gonna go? One gonna go to German, Poland, Italy, the stuff like that. So that's why we need to exterminate, to finish with this. That's the point. And that's why this point is avoided. We talk about religion, we make a big Congress of Religion or human rights and feminism, and we can talk about any very interesting agenda, but we don't talk about the roots of Palestinian cause. Overall, after Oslo, we are brothers, we are cousins, we are the stuff, all this romanticism that is very dangerous, because the Zionism is accelerating the ethnic cleansing and against Palestinian native, and this is the situation. More than to talk about the Gaza or Palestinian Authority, or talk about the festivals, arts, music, it's okay. I believe in all front of resistance, and but we have always to talk about the root of this cause. I mean,
okay. Okay, so to clarify, so from what you're saying to me, like, which is actually some new information, would be the reason you think that this colonization is the worst in our history is because it's actually specifically designed to create a state for you specifically said European Jews as well, to go into Palestine, to take their land.
Yeah, just a minute. It's not only for European and Jewish. It was created, it was born in Europe.
Okay.
That's because it can be for Europe or all over the world, from Africa, from Latin America, or from any country of the world. But native have no right.
Did you want to say
also
something?
I think Susana mentioned the word Europe a couple of times. The overwhelming majority of Jewish people who live with us in this world, the overwhelming majority, you're talking about more than 80% are actually non-Semites. They're not associated. They have very little to no connection with the Middle East, and so they're not genetically associated with the ancestral land. So that we have to make a clear-cut distinction between European Jews and Palestinian Jews. And every time that we have a conversation about Palestine, I prefer to mention the significance of a Palestinian Jewish community, because they're an ancient community, and they still exist in historical Palestine. We have Lebanese Jews, we have Syrian Jews, we have Egyptian Jews. We're not talking about, those are not the colonial Jews that we're referring to. We're referring to Zionism that came from Europe, that was mainly created to cater to the needs of European Jews, who constitute the overwhelming majority of people. Now, a Palestinian Jew is definitely native, every bit as much as a Muslim Palestinian or a Christian Palestinian, which is why Susana did mention that it's never been a religious cause. It's a political conflict. It's a political problem, not a religious problem.
Right. So when people sort of rebut the idea of Israel as an apartheid state, usually Israeli officials, they usually say things like, we have Palestinians or they say they have Arabs or Palestinians in the, what is it called? Their parliament.
Knesset?
Yes. They always like, therefore we can't be apartheid.
Yeah, but let me to tell you, when the Palestine it was colonized by the Ottoman Empire, there were also Palestinians in the parliament of the Turkish Ottoman parliament. It doesn't mean that
they're equal.
It doesn't mean that it's not an apartheid system. And yes, this is an apartheid system. But I would like to say also that the apartheid, I never talk about apartheid. I don't say, for example, the end of apartheid. I say the end of colonialism. because apartheid is an instrument of this colonialism, like the wall. The wall is also an instrument of this colonialism. It's like, for example, deny the resolution 194, which is the right of return of Palestinian refugees, and the United Nations is an instrument of this colonialism. So, okay, great. This is a very important point to talk about against apartheid, but we have to go to the root of this conflict. Otherwise, we are not honest. Otherwise, we are not enough aware about the conflict. So that's why when okay, this is a good point. Human right, yes, but it's not a human right. The problem is to how to really to eradicate this colonialism in our time. It's a moral compromise as a human right, as a human condition, as a human.
I mean, human rights is just like an offset. Yeah, it's like one of the symptoms again of the deeper cause, the root of the thing, and because it can refer to everything on all sides of every conflict. There's going to be human rights violations. It's not, so it's not it's not a justification or anything like that. But to go back to what you were saying about this being the worst colonial project or colonization in our history, I kind of, when you were talking about it, it made me think of, because it's specifically designed to take that land. And like you said, they're not going to go back to the countries that they came from, or it was specifically designed already. And I think there was an acknowledgement that the land was occupied, and therefore the genocidal aspect of it was already built into the origins of it, because they knew it was that the only way to sort of, so is that what you're saying? Because I can also think of another colonial situation would be the US or, the United States of America, where the natives are completely, they decide to stay there. The natives are displaced or genocided, really, essentially, but, so there.
Yeah, I want to, yes, let me to tell you about that. For example, in this colonization, when they take, and the classic colonialism, the colonizer, they take the land, but they destroy the history and the culture of native.
Right.
But in this case, Zionism, Europe Zionism, they take the land, but they don't destroy, and
they also take the culture.
They destroy a part, because they have a debate also inside. They take not only the land, they take also the culture, the history, which is not the case in the classic colonialism. The classical, because the classic colonizer, they don't take the history. They have their own history, because they have their own country.
They have their own culture. They impose their culture onto you.
It's going to be simplistic what I want to say. Well, the regime, the colonial regime of Israel, says the falafel is the typical plate of Israel, what I call the colonial regime of Israel. Mm-hmm. This is a proof that they are not a country, and they need to take also all the expression, cultural, culinary, and all the cultural expression, which is really deeply extermination. This is a cannibal.
Right.
This is outrageous. How they are taking your music, your art, or cultural expression. Why they do that? Why? Because it doesn't happen in the classic colonialism. In the classic, they destroy they destroy it, yes, too. Mm-hmm. But they take also a lot of the native culture, and they take it like this is their own culture, which is a outrageous situation.
I mean, I think like in my mind, what makes it I think what you're saying, or my interpretation of what you're saying, is what makes it more egregious is that really when we look at like the next few generations, the entire history has been erased and appropriated. So that means, like, when we're talking about the Palestinians' right to sovereignty, when they gain independence, like, this is even harder because their culture has now been completely co-opted. So what is their culture? What is, it's so much harder to even gain back their identity.
We have to be clear as not abstract. We have to take care not to fall in abstract situation. Right. This is very, very intellectual marketing, the abstraction. This is part also of this censorship, this attractive, it's a very abstract conflict. No. This is a simple conflict. This is a conflict, a native today in 21st century fighting against colonialism. This is what we call Israel. This is a classic colonialism imposed in 1948 against the Palestinian native. Now, if you ask me, what we're gonna do with what we call Jewish or Israeli population, what are we gonna do? I think this is their land. They can stay there, and they became Palestinian because this is the land of Palestine. That's it. That's all.
Okay.
Yes, easy talk. Yes, but we don't have to colonize or self-colonize. I don't want to do that. That's I'm fighting against colonialism since from my mind. I have to struggle with myself, to struggle with my awareness that I never have to be imposed, not let anybody to impose me an agenda, and that this is a huge struggle in my awareness, in my moral, as a human moral, as a human right, also as a human spirit, that we have to fight colonialism from yourself, from your mind also. No, because this pragmatism, this very demagogue, eloquent, the demagogy, intellectual, academic, and those group of human rights, a little bourgeoisie, but very demagogue, and dangerous too. And that this is the falsification of history, is a kind of a Holocaust, intellectual Holocaust, if I can use this metaphor. And I insist, what solution? Because what we can do with this population called Israeli population? This is their land. They were born there, and okay, stay here. If you want to live, leave. If you don't want to live here. But this is the land of Palestinian native, and you are Palestinian. And also, if somebody wants to be Palestinian, you have the right to be Palestinian. Like my parents, my mother, my father, they went to Venezuela and they became Venezuelan. I'm from Venezuela. I'm Venezuelan, but doesn't mean, and it's an open country, but doesn't mean that I wanna renounce, to my roots and to my Arab Semitic roots. I'm Arab, I'm Palestinian, and I have the right to be Palestinian. This is also a right, a mission, a compromise to fight colonialism in our times. So it's not only a national cause, this is a humanistic cause, and it's not only international law. I think is a compromise, is a spiritual and a moral commitment, mission to fight this colonialism.
So when your response to, because oftentimes when I speak to, when I've spoken to Israelis, I guess the response is like they don't think we have the right to exist. Is what
they don't
think that we have a right to exist. I guess they conflate the idea of Israel having the right to exist with but you're saying
okay, sorry to interrupt you. If they say the colonial regime of Israel has the right to exist, Go ahead, but not in my house. If somebody also around the world stand with the colonial regime of Israel to exist, go give them a piece of land of your country. Why you decide in my house? Why you decide? I love Israel. I love Israel. And okay, you have the right to love this apartheid, this colonialism. Okay, you have the right. Go ahead, but give you and the land of your house. Why you decide in my house too? It's you know, because we want peace. It's peace without justice.
Yeah,
it's not honest. It's dirty. It's really against the. It's not. Is out of any generosity. It's out of human beauty. Is against any freedom. I insist. If what we're gonna do with this population, Israeli population, this is the land, but it's not Israel. Israel, because we have to eradicate the concept of macho domination and the imperialism, fascism. That's we are fighting, you know. Right. Because when we talk about human rights, but you don't talk about fascism, even the unhuman capitalism, and that is very artificial. It's not.
Yeah.
Sometimes I see people with a goodwill, honestly, and I don't want to judge people that with goodwill, but they don't go to the imperialism. They don't never talk about imperialism, and even we are blamed. We are rhetoric. We are, no, I don't want to be rhetoric, but this is a reality of our time. Imperialism is this is also another anachronism, and this is wild. And this is so I cannot stop to talk about imperialism because it's still the case. I don't want to.
I mean, I would just argue that it is anachronistic because I don't think it is at all. What imperialism. I think it's so much a part of our time. Like it is, like almost completely.
No, I think when I say imperialism, machism is anachronism is wild, and that we are supposed to be in the 21st century. Because it's still predominant. Yeah, no, it's okay.
Yeah, that's right. It's just semantics, right? But I think, but the reason I say it too is just because
our time
but I just question that just because I feel like Western imperialism, a huge part of it is just their ridiculous claim that they have moral authority. And it's just like completely untrue. And so whenever we talk about imperialism and colonialism, when we admit to it, we're always at like I'm from the UK. So the British Empire, we always admit to it in the past, but the fact is we're still doing it now. And so there's just such a lack of like acknowledgement of what we're doing now. So that's why I'm just like, it's not,
that's retrograde. Is something
supposed to be, but it's not, right? It's supposed to be retrograde.
It's still, but it doesn't. It's like we can see many practices and many cultural that
we consider backwards, I guess.
But we have to say that we are also practicing a lot of anachronism in our time. We have to face it. We have to see it. Even if we have a high-tech technology, it doesn't mean you are not wild or retrograde.
No, I mean, like I've seen the drones now that can go into the Palestinian houses, like undetected and blow up. Like I saw videos of that from the Elbit Systems advertisements of their weapons. It's so scary. The technology is not helping, essentially.
Which is why I think it's our responsibility as people, as progressives around the world, is to work really well with words, because through the right use, through the appropriate use of words, we can clarify what is actually true. We can clarify to our, audiences, wherever they're located, what is actually happening. So it's never a conflict between two states. It's not. You have a colonial state that was created on a country that was occupied. So it's not a conflict between two states. And as Susana said, the Jewish people are a religious group. They're not they don't represent an ethnicity. They came from different places around the world. So it can't be a conflict between two people either. It is a mere conflict between a native Palestinian Arab population that had been residing in their ancestral homeland for so many years, and one colonial force that is strongly backed up by international Zionism, Western imperialism, and, you know, this injustice political force that is only continuing to try and divide us as, you know, as people, you know, and create divisions and create deviations, a lot of political deviations, and like try to sell this idea of human rights. You know, how can you talk about human rights when people are being deprived of their land, are being, you know, their history and culture, as she said, are constantly being stolen, and you're still talking about human rights? You
can talk about human rights, but it should be from that perspective. It should be the perspective of the Palestinians, you know, then you can talk about it, right?
Of course, we talk about the human rights. Definitely, yes.
Yeah.
But I don't.
It's just weaponized on the other side. That's the problem.
But we never have to forget the root of this conflict, and at the same time, it can be a destruction. You know, when you talk about the human right, but the human right of Palestinians, because Palestinians, for example, their human rights are violated by a dictator, Palestinian dictator. No, you know, it's not clear.
Yeah, I know that happens that happens everywhere, where it's like, you know, you'd look at a country and then Western imperialism would be like, okay, we'll like just regime change that country because it's a dictatorship, you know, like the irony of doing that. That's like one of the most clear imperialist tools, I think, that they use. But just okay, so one thing you did clarify for me, Ahmed.
For example, but before to go to the other point, because the imperialism, they take the value, the point, they instrumentalize the value of human value, freedom, human right, justice, women, and you know, all those values. It's because this is a value of our secularism. Before imperialism, the value, it was around God, you know, and the beauty, it was around God. When we start to finish with this theocracy, or the value of around the religion, we start to use other value like democracy, and that's democracy, freedom, and justice, women, and that's in the imperialist instrumentalization. Yeah, we have to take care, no? And I insist that how come if we are secular, we use support, for example. Let's just say you don't care about colonialism. It's okay. But what about your value of secular values? Why you support a religious state? It's not because this is the constitution is a theocracy. No, it's not even that. It's like automatically to be Jewish is a nation. And we're scared to talk about that. Mm-hmm. Don't say that. It's not strategic. It's not, you know, it's a big taboo. The people are scared, really scared. And no, but it's not honest. Honest, if we have to talk, you know, it's the most sane issue is that we have to talk about the all totally completely. It's not avoid any point, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to.
It's not sane.
Well, situation. I mean, I think it's really important to acknowledge that the fear about being accused of anti-Semitism, of being, you know, all these things.
You can be
legitimate fears. You can be fired.
You can have a job. You're gonna find a job. The stuff like that, you know. I understand people.
Yeah. So it's not. It's not it isn't rational. It's like it's been built so that people can't think rationally about it because they're just filled with fear. So that is why they can't talk about it. They can't get to the logical conclusion. But the other thing that I really do want to delineate or at least clarify is like, I know talking to Ahmed, for example, that it's really not, and you know, so Susana, it's not like we don't believe in feminism or freedom or whatever. It's because the thing that is so frustrating is that often the people that are shouting the loudest about freedom and democracy and they do not realize that their own countries, their own actions are actually directly opposed to those values. And so their countries are taking democracy, taking freedoms, like for example, the Iran situation. If you care about feminism, then you should abolish the sanctions because that affects the most vulnerable of a society, not so much just be talking about women's rights, but then not doing anything tangible about it, you know? So it's just so frustrating because the imperialist projects, the colonial powers, they have taken these terms and they have used them as weapons against the rest of us while doing the exact opposite in action. So I just want to like clarify. I mean, I'm sure we all agree with that, but it's just like, it's frustrating to be constantly headbutted against that. Those rhetoric that you're saying, I guess the abstractions and not why no one talks about imperialism, because honestly, I think most people don't understand that they are the imperial powers. So they don't want to admit that. Like, I mean, most people that I'm talking to in the West still don't have an understanding that they are the imperial core, you know?
But people that doesn't want to talk about imperialism because it's not part of this marketing.
Yes.
You know,
well,
yeah, this is intellectual marketing. No, I don't want to talk about imperialism.
I mean, they don't understand it at this point.
It's not part of this reality show, you know?
Yeah, because how are we going to continue to pretend that we have the moral high ground when we admit or we know that we are the imperialist people? Like, it's going to be impossible in the West, like speaking for my fellow Westerners. Like, how do we...
Sorry to interrupt, Ileana. I feel like it's also important to highlight the idea of power dynamics. When power dynamics are hugely working in your favor. So I'm talking about historical Western imperialist forces here. I'm not necessarily referring to the colonial regime of Israel. So let's take like European forces, the United States, and all these, you know, historical forces have committed some of the worst heinous crimes in history, some of the worst atrocities. But now you have a state of prosperity, of so much power. It is a lot more convenient and a lot easier for you to come across as the good guy when in fact all of your history proves the exact opposite.
Yes.
When you have so much power, you can afford to be the good guy, even when at heart you're the worst guy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can educate your masses. Like, that's what we do. We educate them. We educate ourselves, I guess, to believe that we are the good guy. And so you have to erase everything. I mean, how could you not? You know.
But this situation is not new.
No.
It's not new. For example, when it was the value, it was in the pre-secular time, it was the same. In the name of God, and you know, we represent God in the earth. But you, in the name of this God, the value, the human value, sentiment, and that it was in the rationality of human rights, and that we make the biggest genocide. It's the same now. With secular capitalist, we make also instrumentalize the value in this secular values, human rights, for example, and then we make the genocide. Is the continuation. As you said before, imperialism it was before, and is still the case. And
Right.
that's why I say we are in this atropinated in this anachronism. How to make this a revolution? How to liberate the
Right.
human condition against this? And that because this is the instrumentalization of values, human values, to dominate the other. And this is atrophy. We are still in this atrophy.
But how do we, so just to clarify some things, like one, Ahmed made a really good reason for why the two-state solution, and you both actually, but the two-state solution cannot work, does not make sense, completely irrational, like that's off the table, right? So are you proposing something, like I've heard the term one-state solution, so I don't know, is that what you're proposing? Because I'm not sure what it means really and how to go about it.
Yeah, listen, after Oslo, we start also to repeat what the world start to talk, and they say, well, it was complicated for me to state, because you have to be fragmented, you have to be cut. It's like I cut one of your eyes, one is for you, and the other is for your neighbor.
Right.
This honestly is like that, and I have a problem with two-state solution.
Right.
Why I have to cut to the land of my ancestry?
Right.
And this is a kind of colonialism too. This is a modality of colonialism too. And
Yes.
okay, I start to say, well, one-state solution, to live all together, which I believe in, to live all together, because this population, they are there, and they have the right to be there as a Palestinian, and to have the same right as a Palestinian. And but I stop now to talk about one state to a state. I say I would like to take the narrative and the essence and the roots of the Palestinian cause, the liberation of Palestinian native against this colonial anachronism. That's why now I want to in this term I want to talk, not this agenda of Western agenda, Oslo agenda.
Okay.
And that's my point. Many people criticize me. This is not a strategic. You have to be soft. You have to be subtle. And I think the almost 30 years, and we are saying after Oslo, two-state solution is a good time, because the colonial regime of Israel accelerated the colonialism. And they didn't give anything to Palestinian. It's all contrary. So we have to go back to our roots, the Renaissance and of our roots. I believe, and the liberation of Palestinian native against colonialism. That's even I don't talk about occupation. No, I prefer. People are free. I don't want to impose my lexicon, but I think in the Pacific way, the lexicon is very important, because when people say no, the war, struggle army, for example, is not good, because this is violence. Even though I have to respect all front of a struggle is valid. As a native, even this is in the international law. I think the resolution 3070 is that they say that all people have the right to struggle, even they can use violence against any threat, any foreign threat. So honestly, we have to go to the root of this cause. And this is the liberation of Palestinian native. I don't talk anymore enough to talk in two-state solution, one-state solution. I take it the liberation of Palestinian.
Right. I think it's more specific. It's more clear to people. Like, for example, for me, when I heard one state, I'm like, but what does that mean? Like, it could be just one state, just Israel. Just one state of Israel.
But when we talk the liberation of Palestinian native, is one state.
Yeah, but then it's more clear because you said the liberation of the Palestinian natives, and then it's like that one state makes more sense.
Because I think people is the idea is to like inform people.
Right.
Say, this is a cause of against colonialism, which the people is not clear, even in the academic ways, in the media, you know, any media. So that's why
they keep, I mean, they keep, it's like you're saying, the falsification of the history. They keep going back to that so that they're distracting us from the idea that's colonization. If they just keep saying that, you know, like the Jews were there first or something, it's like.
No, but before, because listen, because Judaism is a monotheist religion, which was born in Iraq, to say in great terms. But all this, but before monotheism, it was polytheism, much before Canaanite. It was very monotheistic. Babylonians, which in Iraq. So, but this monotheism, Judeo-Christian, Muslim, it's belong to Arab ancestry. You know, that's a Christianity. It's belong to our ancestry. Christianity is an Arab Semite heritage. So if we want to consult, if we want to make appeal to the history, so all this monotheism, this trilogy, Judeo-Christian, Muslim, this is our history. It's belong to us. Imagine, if those three religions start to reclaim historic rights there. So it's to say, for example, Jewish were the first. My ancestor is Jewish too. So it's, but not those Ashkenazi with the roots ethnically is Indo-European, you know, Caucasian, or you know, it's white. It's not. You embrace with the time. You embrace a religion which come from Middle East, or from Levant, or the Arab, which or today we call Arabs, and it's the falsification of history. You know, of course we have a Jewish Arab, which they are native, but as a native, not as a Semite, not as a Jewish or Christian or Muslim. No, you know, we have to make a distinction, and that's the point, that is a taboo. We don't talk about that, which is not sane. And I try to struggle how is the most sane issue in this. Of course, I have a position. I'm anti-Zionist. This is the most clear point of my life, that I'm anti-Zionist. I'm anti-Zionist the same way I'm against any kind of fascism and colonialism. This is against humanism. This is against human spirit. It's not also because this is a national cause. No, it's more than that.
Which is why, unfortunately, there's a lot of inaccuracy and a lot of mess surrounding the word anti-Semitism. You know, what existed in Europe, in historical Europe, all this rhetoric that historical Europe was anti-Semitic. No, historical Europe was primarily anti-Jewish, because the Jews who had lived in Europe were not Semites anymore, any less than the Chinese Muslims, you know. And so the real Semites, as Susana might have mentioned, her ancestry could have been Jewish. She is a real Semite. She is a descendant of the real Semites. And so even I'm against the use of the word anti-Semitism as though it represents the European. It has no representation whatsoever, you know, with the European Jews. They're not Semites.
Yeah, I would like to say, for example, Israeli is not Israelite. Israelite nope. is belong to us as an Arab. Is part of our roots. The Israeli is not Israelite, which is different. Nope. The other point also, I would like, I lost my idea. The other point is for example, when they say this is the land of their ancestor, the European Zionists, in order to justify this colonialism. It's insist we have to think of the falsification of history, and it's completely outrageous how they took this the Bible or the monotheism, this trilogy, to justify in the beauty way, in the very aesthetic way, romantic way, it's an epic, way, and this seduction, which is sadistic, is also the something that's really is against the is the most morbid history that I see, how they beautify this falsification of history. And that's why I insist that we have to change our lexicon, not only to talk about religion and human rights, which is very important to use to talk about human rights, because after human rights, Western people, Western mass start to approach, to discover Palestinian cause. No, definitely. We have to insist in human rights. I never deny that. Please, no, this is very important. But the root is not human rights. It's not religious. It's a native. Today, in our times, 21st century, we are talking about colonialism, this anachronism. This is not a trophy. We are still in this misery. And that's why we have to make this revolutionary state. I think that's the liberation of Palestine is the liberation of the world.
Because how does that happen?
No, it's struggling to be honest, and not let the fear take your spirit. You have to fight against fear, that because this is very repressive international power. The most powerful movement in the world is Zionism. Is the most powerful fascist movement in the world, which is this is not easy. It's not easy, but any revolution is easy. Any struggle is easy. But the worst thing is not to fight, to struggle for it. And as a we have to struggle against that. I think we have a date with human history, to fight Zionism, because we can also save Judaism. It's Mahmoud Darwish said, for example, also it's in the liberation of our people, we have to liberate our enemy, which is, I think, is a universal peace reflection that he did, Mahmoud Darwish from Galilee, our national or our human poet. So it's not easy. It's not easy, but why have to be easy?
I mean, it can't be easy when the powers against are so outsized. But does this mean it's like Ahmed, you had mentioned before that there are like an armed resistance now that is different from before in Palestine? And is that what you're talking about?
Well, absolutely. First of all, I think it's better for us to continue to remind ourselves that even though there's been wars lost, the Palestinian people have never, they're not defeated. The Palestinian people are continuing to struggle, to fight colonialism. So, and the Palestinian population is growing, and the times are changing. And yes, there has been an armed conflict recently in the West Bank in Nablus, and that once upon a time stone fighters now have weapons, and things might continue to evolve, and 75 years, the Palestinians are, more so heard nowadays than ever before. So this is definitely a struggle, as Susana said, and I look at it as a good thing. The Palestinians are not defeated. The Palestinian people, even though power dynamics are definitely working in favor of one side, which is the colonial side, and against the native population and the native Palestinian population. But this is why I believe in the strong spirit of the people, because people will prevail in the end, not political entities. You guys were talking a little bit about Zionism here, and like, it's unfortunate that there's been this attempt to sort of mix Zionism with Judaism when they're completely separate concepts. And I wanted to add a funny fact, was that the early Zionists, the people who were in charge of creating this colonial regime of Israel, Susana would know, for the most part, they were atheist politicized individuals. They were not even Jewish.
Yeah.
They didn't have that faith. Yeah, they wanted to create a country to cater to the needs of the Jewish people. What a contradiction.
Yeah. But also would like to say that, Ahmed, when you talk about Palestinian are dynamic, and yes and no, but we have to be self-critic also. And that's why I don't know, I insisted that we have to go to our roots, to the Palestinian struggle. I think we have to stop to talk about one state to state. This is my point of view. And I scare a lot because it's very difficult, our struggle. For example, Arab regimes, dictatorship in the Arab world, they know that the fall of the colonial regime of Israel is going to be also a domino effect. So the fall of the colonial regime of Israel is going to be also the fall of Arab dictators. For example, Saudi Arabia now, which has from a long time ago a big link with the colonial regime of Israel. So, and now, for example, they start to beautify, they start to falsification the history, and the schools, they say that we are cousin. For example, this new colonialization under the schools. And that doesn't scare me. That is a new challenge that we have to fight against our traitors, Arab traitors, like Saudi Arabia, like, for example. Now, not only Saudi Arabia, only which there is a big problem of human rights, but it's not that the point. So, new generation, they start to have a new feeling, new sentiment, and they say, well, Israel has the right to exist because they are our cousin. They are not our cousin. I mean, they are cousin between Semite and Semite. Example, a Jewish Semite with the Muslim Semite. Example, Chinese Muslim is not a cousin of a Muslim or Jewish French is not a cousin of a Muslim Chinese. They are not cousin. One is ethnically Chinese, and the other is from Europe, but ethnically they are different. Both are not Semite, but they are Jewish. It's okay, but we have to stop this falsification of history, and we have a big struggle. We have to struggle against our dictators. Even Palestinian Authority is now collaborating with the colonial regime of Israel, which it's always the case. There is no country without heroes and traitors. We have our heroes and we have our traitors, and we have to face those traitors, and that's why one way is not to follow the agenda, the lexicon, the terms. That's why I say, well, it's human right, religious, or we want peace, but peace without justice. And the peace, what does that mean? The end of Palestinian native, which I'm talking, Palestine is around the 11,000 years of history written. And that's the point that we have to think about it. You know, it's and I think not only Palestinian, not only Arabs, is all the people around the world to say no to fear. You, for example, and that don't. Yes, it scare me, but we don't have to stop. Even this is a scary situation of this international movement, which is Zionism, which
Yeah.
because I think it's humanity is in it.
I mean, yeah, I think from me though, like from what you're saying, and I would just from my own mind clarify it, is that this is again another case of how they use identity politics to divide us when really the delineation or the powers that we're fighting against is Zionism. Zionism is part of this imperialism that we're talking about. So that's why it would include the dictatorships, Saudi, etc., that have aligned with those powers. And therefore, when we're fighting against them, you know, it's not like if you just make it Arabs against Jews, you know, you're like completely dismissing all the imperialism and the structures and the fascism, etc. So it's not about that. And it's like so much easier to distract us when we use, you know, those terms. So that's what it comes down to. But I had another question. Well, I guess so this is a thing, like going back to this armed resistance thing. And this idea of like, well, what is the solution? How do the Palestinians get liberated? Like, what would it require? And I mean, I think Ahmed, you're saying like you actually support the militarization of the resistance. It's that because, you know, as someone who I've called myself anti-war over and over again, but I also am I'm just genuinely struggling to see another option, because when we watched from Gaza Fights for Freedom, the March of Return, they just were gunned down. You know, it's like, what are the solutions? What are the options here?
Okay, I think all fronts are valid, and Pacific way is important value, is important also instrument. BDS, for example, is wonderful. And definitely we have to invest and really believe in BDS. BDS is scientifically, and this is a powerful and artistic and cultural and the diaspora, and the Pacific way is a very important instrument. Mm-hmm. But I'm against when people say no, but not to war. We see that the army, the strong, this alternative. We have no right to say how you have to fight. I think we don't have this right. Even if I don't like it, I'm not a religious person, for example, I'm a Palestinian atheist, and I begin and say why it's religious. Always are valid, and the religious, financial, cultural, humanitarian, human right, all Pacific way. I embrace that. I have to embrace it. This is a powerful. Also, this is an instrument of struggle. Please, but I don't have the right to say how you have to struggle. No, because I'm against violence. It's because I'm anti-war, and I have to impose, because sometimes it's a strategic, you know, it's an agenda, imperialist way, you know, and the time show that the absence of army is not good for Palestinian liberation. All those instruments are valid to fight. And we can see it in Lebanon. Hezbollah, it wasn't in the flamenco. It wasn't only a Pacific way. It was an army struggle.
Right.
You know, it's the colonial regime of Israel. They left part of this territory without condition. Without condition, they said they didn't put any condition to Hezbollah to Lebanon, which is there was a victory in the Arab world. And I don't want to be. We are criticized, even say you are apologetic of violence. No, don't. I don't want to be scared of your manipulation. And I believe that's also, and we check the history of humanity. Violence is a instrument of freedom, even if it's perverse, even if it's sad. Definitely, I don't want violence. I don't want violence, but that is still the case, and I see my people is going to disappear.
Right.
There is so
there is a genocide happening.
It's very comfortable. Also, it's very comfortable to say no war, and I yell like go die.
Yeah,
no,
you can't. I mean, violence is already happening.
It's not easy for me about that. I don't want army. I don't want, but listen, they are exterminating my people. This is the extermination of a people who has more than 11,000 years of history, and is not only the Palestine. They talk about the great Israel. They won't need, because this colonialism is expansionist. By the way, you know that the colonial regime of Israel, that we call Israel, has no national constitution. Why? Because there is a Jewish or anti-Jewish people who doesn't want the national constitution. Why they don't have a national constitution? Because they are obligated to
identify their borders.
The borders. And they say our borders is more than Palestine. It's Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, part of Iran, part of Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. So this is a threat of we are in danger. Our Arab culture, Arab, Persian, Kurdish situation is in a traumatic situation. So I insisted that we have to be liberated from our own fears. I don't like, I'm anti-war. That's is not responsible to say that I don't have right to impose. Nobody to tell me, even Palestinian, even Western, even people of goodwill, to say no to you have no right
to defend yourself,
to choose the army way. No, this is very despotic. This is very
that's true. I think there's like two things that really brought up for me was one, still having that, for me, that sort of imperial brainwashing of like, well, what's the best thing that someone else should do, you know, versus like you just said, you, like me or anyone from the West, don't have the right to say or to determine how someone who is faced with that colonialization should fight for their rights, you know, whatever it is. We don't have the right to impose that. If we care so much about these issues, there are things that we can do in our own countries, because, like, you know, the facts are that Israel is being armed by the US and obviously the UK as well. I mean, so we have things to do here. We are against that. I just interviewed Hoda Omori. She started this Palestine direct action group, which targeted Elbit Systems. So that's like, you know, it's the biggest arms manufacturer in Israel, and shut them down in the UK. So the things that we can actually tangibly do outside, that is not about interfering with, and again, another country's right to do what they choose to do. But it's funny how I also, I did think in those terms.
Even me as a Palestinian, I have no right to tell you how to struggle for Palestine. You choose. Decide. You, even if you are not Palestinian. No, because I'm as a human being. You decide how to struggle for justice. That's the point that I would like to focus. But also, I would like to talk about another point, because there is also a lot of amazing personality in the Western and in the Arab world. They say they are pro-Palestinian, deeply pro-Palestinian. But after Oslo, we say, well, they start also the speech saying Israel has the right to exist. For example, I like a lot Chris Hedge. I like this man. Yeah, and like even Noam Chomsky, which I have my doubt now.
Me
about
too.
him. It's with all my, of course, I when I respect him as a human being, that's okay. Even Bernie, and they say, well, that's okay. We are Palestinian. We are pro-Palestinian, the Palestinian human rights, Palestinian right, but the Israel has the right to exist. Okay, but to impose me that they have the right to exist in my house.
Yeah,
I don't have problems if you want to be in my house, but as a Palestinian, and the equal rights,
right.
Equal,
yeah,
we are that's the point, and I think we have to think about that, to think when, for example, Chris H is saying Israel has the right to exist, which I didn't deny. But this is why you impose me in my house.
Yeah, I mean, is he saying that because? But is he saying that because of the conflation that, like I've said, that when I've talked to someone Israeli or someone who is, I guess, Zionist, they have this conflation between, it's like they're conflating genocide with the right for Israel to exist,
Yeah, but this is grotesque too.
Yeah, it's a grotesque. I agree. And I think I even am hesitant now to even call myself pro-Palestine, because I think, again, it just like feeds into this narrative, like as if it's teams, and it's like not. It's like what you said. It's a colonial. This is a native and colonial thing. It's not about being pro-Palestine or pro-Zionist, like. So I'm even like hesitant now to say I'm pro-Palestine, but honestly, I would just say, like, I think now I would also change my language to really what you're saying, like, it's a fight against colonialism. It's the Palestinian right to fight against colonialism. I would say that rather than pro-Palestine. It creates so many misunderstandings for what it is. So I think you're right about that.
Yeah. And when people say, and those people who I respect, who are honest too, and they say, well, Israel has the right to exist, because this is a kind of pragmatism, or not pragmatism, because we need peace. We have to think about peace,
because they don't think it will ever be resolved. Yeah, I guess
it's not peace is the peace is justice. Yeah. So because you are imposing me, and that you are this is a invisible colonialism that we have inside.
Yeah. And I think beyond that too, like if we're talking about Chris Hedges, we're talking about anyone in the West, intellectuals who say that, the problem is our countries are directly funding the Israeli army. We cannot say that they have the right, we are specifically giving them cover to continue this funding. So like, even though I'm sure Chris Hedges would not be for funding, but saying that they have the right to exist suggests that it's like part of the narrative to why they need weapons from us.
Well, I don't think this is not a narrative. This is because Zionism has not a narrative. They have propaganda. Judaism, yes. Judaism has history and narrative, yes, and that we have to reserve to conserve that, and that we have to.
It's propaganda.
Fighting Zionism. Like. We are not anti-Islam when we are not anti-Muslim when we fight Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, even the regime of Saudi Arabia. Doesn't mean we are anti-Muslim. Doesn't mean, when you fight a Ku Klux Klan, it doesn't mean you are anti-Christian. When you fight Nazism, doesn't mean you are anti-German. No, it's the whole contrary. So, and I think to fight Zionism is the most pro-Jewish position. And I think we have to reflect, to think about that, our lexicon. We don't have to scare. I don't think this regime, colonialism, have the right to exist.
Right.
That wow, you are not responsible. You are not serious. You are not intelligent.
Yeah.
You are not smart. You are not strategic. No, I want to be honest.
But you also just, because the thing is that it can be true, but you've also just said that it's not like you're going to like kick everybody Israeli out. No, you never said that.
This is against the beauty of Palestinian cause. This is against also the root of Palestinian cause. We have to do that is really to destroy Palestinian cause, the soul of Palestinian cause. Please, never. Let's stay there. This is your country. I was in Palestine. I met a guy. He said, Susana, he was clear. This is a colonial regime, but I was born here.
Yeah.
And I say it's belong to you, because I was supposed to be born there. I was born in Venezuela, and I love Venezuela. It was there where I start life. I started the life. It was in Venezuela, with the song of Palestine. When Aram Allah, when Aram Allah. I'm Latino Arab. I'm both. I'm Canadian too, and never expelled them. Any what I call the Israeli, colonial Israeli. It's I think it's going to be against the justice, against the Palestinian cause. Definitely. No, as Mahmoud Darwish says, I want to repeat this phrase because it's follow me, it's in my soul. And the liberation of Palestinian cause is that we have to liberate our enemy, and that's why I think we have to go further. But the Palestinian liberation is the liberation of the world. But the world is in the obligation to be a new world. And this is not a romantic issue that I want to present. And I believe in the independence of Palestinian native against this anachronism called Israel, imposed from Europe by European through a movement called Zionism in 1948, where my mother, my father, they were expelled. And they are a survivor of the Al-Nakba.
Catastrophe. But back to what you guys were saying about resistance, I still think there is a lot that can be done as a form of resistance to liberate Palestine from even within the Western world. We all agree that resistance is not just by, holding weapons and confronting the enemy militarily, but, if the more that we have some of our, our voices being more profoundly heard, even in mainstream media outlets, because unfortunately, mainstream media outlets have become experts in deviating us from what is actually true, from the core of the problem, so that they can sell more. And just so that, by the way, just so that the political colonial forces can stall and buy time and buy additional time, because in the end, much like the COVID-19 scandal and, wrongdoing was revealed in 2 years, the case for Palestine can be revealed and will be revealed. Sooner or later, this colonial regime will have to collapse. Sooner or later, the colonial regime.
Ahmed, or Palestinian can disappear. Also,
yes,
that's why
of course, that's what I'm saying.
What you say is a logic, but logic is theory, is imaginary, intelequia, which we call it that in Spanish, and that's why
it's our responsibility. It's our responsibility to continue to do works in favor of true liberalism and and anti-imperialism and anti-colonialism. We have to expose the dirty works. We have to make our voices louder. We have to be out there. We have to be represented in the media, and we have to invest in public relations. We have to, the Palestinian Authority does not represent the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people represent themselves. No political entity should represent, the Palestinian people are under colonialism. They're not a free people yet. And so it is their responsibility and their supporters' responsibility and the progressives around the world to work together and to find a solution out of this, struggle.
I mean, I just feel like even, for example, this, like we were saying about how so many people conflate the Ukraine situation with Palestine in a completely wrong, in my opinion, wrong way,
They're
like
not
completely
comparable.
Irrational. Yes, they're not comparable in terms of facts. But I think what is interesting is like if the wider population, like in Europe, and there've been so many protests against sending arms to the Ukraine because there's this it's basically like, why are we sending all this money to Ukraine and we don't even have money for like gas, or food or whatever. And it's kind of like, that's the thing in the West. If we can, like, the population can start to question, why are we sending money to Israel? Like, even if it's just a selfish reason, like, why are we spending billions of money, billions of pounds or billions of dollars to Israel when we have all these problems? I mean, that's already, if we could everybody just agree on that and we could cut off the funds, that would already make such a huge difference in the region. And that's actually within our power, as awful as it feels, because we're against so much propaganda, but that is within our power as like part of the West, right? So
yeah, concerning Ukraine, it's well, yes, now Zelensky is a hero,
oh God.
and he is which is really this grotesque and ugly, because the movement is a Nazi movement,
yeah,
which is insult. This is a humiliation to you, to me, to any human being of our time. But we can see, for example, here in Canada, that the government, they say this terrorist guy, even if he was elected democratically, he is a hero, the savior of humanity, and he is a terrorist, and with the conception of Nazi, classic Nazi, it's not a neo-Nazi, no, it's a pure Nazism, and really, it's deeply sad in my soul and in our soul how we support those Nazis.
Yeah, but I think what's interesting about that,
now it's valid to support them for with the army, and but the Palestinian native, no war, a pacific way, and the war is not the solution. And I was in this kind of sound too. I was before like that after Oslo. I have to admit it, huh? But they say, they are manipulating us. And so it's, it's good for you, but it's not good for the other. This is a really obscene situation. Obscene, very obscene. How come even in the colonial regime of Israel say we support the Stefan Bandera groups, which was a Nazi who killed a lot of Jewish in the time of Nazism. So it's deeply sad, and this is a shock. Deeply, I don't know. This is a big disappointment. How, for example, not Jewish, Israeli, what we call the Israeli, that are supporting those Nazi, and it's very obscene. It's very obscene, and that's why we have to stop. To say, well, to follow the Western agenda, and that we have to talk from our awareness. We have to make our revolution, and that there is inside us a revolution is waiting for us, and that we are scared. Not that we have to break this scare. is the most honest and sane step that we have to do.
I agree. Thank you so much. Do you have any more words of wisdom to impart? I feel like we covered the cause really well. I think I learned a few things and clarified a few things in my own mind. And also, I think for me going forward, being more careful about my words, you know, I was saying about the pro-Palestine thing, like really framing it so people understand it's a colonial situation and understanding what that means, even though, you know, I have my own frustration with people not necessarily understanding what colonialism means, but at least that way it gives, you know, more of a understanding of what's going on versus, you know, what I was saying, being kind of like sports teams or something ridiculous like that. So, is there anything else you want to cover or say before we finish?
Well, first, me is to thank you and
oh, thank you.
Be brave, we have to continue to fight to find to be honest. That's the point, I think, and I think that we don't have to follow this agenda, Western agenda. Even the people with a good will is going further. And I insist, I'm a Palestinian, I have the right to be Palestinian. That this is a struggle today in our 21st century. I want to finish how I start. What is the Palestinian cause? This is a cause of native people who are fighting against colonialism. And that we are in the 21st century, and that we have to fight this anachronism, this fascism, this obscene colonialism in our time. Thanks a lot for your invitation, honestly. You too, Ahmed.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ileana. It was wonderful exchanging our set of ideas. I learned a lot too. We have to continue to, you know, believe in ourselves and our strong spirits, and just, you know, have more works of this nature moving forward.
Okay, thank you so much, both of you.